Evolutionary.org, episode 646 is coming your way. Today we're going to talk about, we're going to do an interview with EVO Logger, coolguy77711. So he can be found if you go on the Evolutionary forum on the top right, search, and then you put in his name, Cool Guy, CoolGuy 77711. Search by member. You'll come up and find his post. In his signature, you'll see his logs. And you have 4 logs in your signature, Cool Guy. And the current one that you're doing is the one that we're going to talk about, but we can also talk about your previous ones as well. So you have really, really good stuff on your log. So I was really excited to talk about that. We're also going to talk about some other stuff, being a new dad, getting started in bodybuilding, what made you become a bodybuilder, the friends that you've made on Evo, and the advice that you've learned and the knowledge that you've been able to share as well. So it's going to be a really good episode. First, to remind everyone, we are on Apple, we are on Spotify. It's very important that you all out there smash the like button, subscribe, so the algorithms pick up our podcast. There's so much trash out there being spewed on a daily basis. 99% of these podcasts out there are trash. So we really want to get this podcast out there to really help people and give the proper information out there. So it's up to you to help spread this podcast out. So let's start. Cool Guy, how you doing this morning? Or late your time. It's morning for me. It's middle day for Mobster, and it's late your time as we do this podcast. How you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, good, Steve. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
So first,
It's
we always want to make sure Mobster gives his spiel to thank you
Yeah.
first of all.
Yeah. What something we're actually going to talk about today is the information and the community that we've got on Evolutionary. And something I said for the most recent shows is we can't have these shows without guests coming on, as Steve just said. So thank you for that. And the obvious thing, which comes from Evolutionary as a whole, and people like yourself being part of that community, is something that seems to have grown more in recent months than it ever had in the last few years that I've been on, and prior to that with Steve. And that is the sense of community that we've got. So people like yourself coming on this show help that. The information you're putting out in the forum for yourself and other people benefiting from that information we receive. So thank you so much for coming on the show today from both myself, Steve, the Evolutionary community, the moderators and members of the forum, and the bosses as well. Just again, thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, cheers for that. I appreciate it. I enjoy being on things like this,
So
spreading information, helping out and stuff.
Yep. So one of the things you can help people out there is about being a new dad. So touch on that. What's that experience like? Mobster's a dad. I don't have any children that I know of, at least. That I probably do, but I just don't know about them probably out there. So for me, I'm a cat dad. So and Mobster's a cat
I
dad.
was I was very lucky, Steve, that I very rarely had to do the dadly stuff. But seeing what Cool Guy mentioning it on his log, I made a note. And then in the DMs with Cool Guy, as research for today's show, it came up as a topic. And the only other thing, and I mentioned this to Cool Guy in the pre-show, with Mel Llewellyn, James Llewellyn, the IFBB pro, is missus. It's just not long had their second kid. I think coming up on a year. And one of the things that she said is that she struggles sometimes to sleep, either with a baby in the bed or getting enough sleep at night. But she still comes into the gym. James still comes to the gym. So I wanted to ask Cool Guy today, and again, this is for the benefit of our listeners as much as it is a topic of discussion. How do you cope with being a new dad, getting your meals in, getting to the gym, getting work done, all the normal family stuff, but obviously with the interrupted nights, baby needing what it needs, and so on and so forth. So give the listeners an insight, especially the younger listeners who haven't had this experience yet, what that's like and how you deal with it.
Yeah, no worries. Well, look, not gonna lie, it was pretty rough at the start. Obviously went from no child to having a child. The first couple of weeks we were completely off. So these are the 2 most kind of crucial weeks. Myself and my wife, we were taking turns in basically staying up pretty much the whole night, taking in shifts and trying to keep the child, make sure they're fed, safe, that kind of stuff. After that, it's a little bit better. We kind of basically, we would kind of rotate through night. One person would have her, and then the other person would. But yeah, it's a bit rough, you know. So my work, for example, is pretty seasonal. So as we come into the hot months here in Australia, my work goes from, you know, 8:30 till 6:30. But I've got to get up 6:30, right? So I'm going 6:30, 6:30, and then I'll come home. I've got to have my meal four, pre-gym meal, you know, deal with the kid, pick her up from daycare on the way, all that kind of stuff. Go to the gym, come home, meal five, shower, bed, repeat. It's pretty much every day. It's a bit like that. And of course, if you have like a slip up or something happens along the way and you've got a complication or, you know, we've just gone through teething here for our little one, which means our sleep goes from being, you know, okay, pretty good to pretty average. We've had 3 hours sleep nights, we've had 4 hour sleep nights, we've had 2 hour sleep nights. So it can get a bit rough, unfortunately, but you know, it is what it is, and you know, we're working through, you know, the key thing is, you know, get your meals in, get to the gym, get your training. You've got to keep that routine up. Even if you go and you're doing, you know, half your workout, you know, part of your workout, you're just even making it to the gym. The fact that you've got that kind of um, you know, consistency is that's what keeps it going.
You have to have a routine. Is that what you're saying? Like you have to kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
consistent
routine. That was
routine.
the word.
Yeah.
That was the word.
And you have to have kind of a teamwork as well with your
Yes.
spouse so that
Exactly.
does she work out as well?
No, she doesn't really. She's a bit more, you know,
Okay.
stressed out from work. She'll come home. It's not really her thing.
Okay.
But she
I
does
wonder
support
if
me.
she did work out, how would that work? Would it work out like where you go to the gym, she watches the baby,
Yeah.
and then you come home and then she gets to go and you know,
That's
you
what
watch
Yeah,
James and Mel do. But obviously, with him being a crypto fella, it's easier for him to work from home. Something that
yeah,
I
exactly.
suggested, and I don't know if it applies to you, cool guy, but you can let us know if it does. The little tiny bit of experience that I had, because we never had the nature of that relationship you've got when my baby was born, was I would grab sleep or naps when I could. So, for example, if I was going to collect her, I'd sleep on the train or try to doze on the train. And the same thing again, especially when she was younger. Um, I would, 20 minutes here, 40 minutes there, whatever the hell I could, because I can only imagine as a parent, and this is again one of those sort of insightful things, when you're super fucking tired and stressed, and when the babies, literally, Steve, it's human, it's actually part of nature for the baby scream to be tuned at just that frequency that gets your fucking attention, whether you like it or not. If it was low pitched or higher pitched, you probably wouldn't notice it, but it's pitched just so that you go, for fuck's sake, and you go off and deal with it. So I was always like, if I was in that situation now, and I think Mel and James are, they can have the idea of, if the baby wants to lay down, I'll have a lay down. If the baby's asleep, I'm sleeping. If the baby's awake, I'm awake. And that's hard to deal with. And especially, how long would you say, cool guy? You just said she's teething now. So the idea up to that period of time, we're talking about the first, I mean, I'm going to say the first year to 2 years, and then it seems to calm down. That can look or feel like a long time, but it also, it's your baby. Something Mel said this morning, and she said, I do what I got to do because I'm a mum. And that's the kind of vibe as a dad that you need to tune into, guys. So, it's hard work, but we choose to have kids. It's stressful, but you are still getting to the gym. You are still smashing the fucking granny out of stuff when you get there. And what about this as well, cool guy? And again, this is something for the listeners. Once you're at the gym, it's not actually that bad. It's just a tiredness when you get there. But sometimes when you're in the flow at the gym, things click in and stress comes out, and it's okay to do. How does that feel for you once you actually arrive and get there and get it done, especially if you've got the mules in?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That is 100% right. You by the time you get to the gym, you know, first exercise in, right? Then you warm up, you get into it, you're good to go most of the time. There's a couple of times where I've been that tired that, you know, I only get through half the workout or whatever. But the fact that I went and I did what I could do, went as hard as possible and come home, that's what matters, I reckon.
Yeah, and I think also the food thing. So even if you're only maintaining, getting something done, And if you get the food in, you're not going to slide too far backwards. On that subject, you mentioned, because I asked you about your body weight, you said you'd had a bit of an illness. And I did notice some of the Australians the last 2, 3 months pre the warm weather you're getting right now. Plenty of people say it's a flu-like virus. And you said actually that was probably more impactful when you're not gaining the weight or cutting the weight that you would like to have done, because you will. Talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had a couple of pretty good flus run through here, but it is actually because we've just put my child into daycare, and those places are a fucking breeding ground for viruses
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So she came home with a fever. I was taken out for about 3 or 4 days, nausea, sweating, like it was bad. And you can only imagine what it is like for a child. So you've got a child crying, screaming, they've got a flu, a cold, a fever, whatever. And then now you've also got the same thing, right? So you're not only are you not getting sleep to recover, but now you also got the sickness you're trying to deal with. And you know what I mean? Like you can't eat. I'm trying to keep my protein up. So what I was doing instead of actually eating food, because I couldn't keep it down, I'm just smashing protein shakes. It's protein shake, water, protein shake, that type of stuff. Just try to keep the protein up, because I think that's one of the key things. Unfortunately, obviously, you still lose a bit of weight. You're not getting to the gym. You sleep shit. It is what it is. But we've had a couple of those, so it's been a bit of a rough journey. But I think we're past it. We're
Yeah.
back on it. We're
Ready to
pushing,
grow.
gaining weight. Yeah,
Ready to
let's
grow. Yeah.
ready to go.
I think there's a thing, and not to sound too negative when we do these shows, but this is real life listeners. This is stuff that happens to people. Some of our younger listeners won't have had kids yet. You're probably going to have kids at some point. The idea that you're going to be perfectly fucking healthy all the time is a dream. There will be illnesses and times when you struggle. And it's people like CoolGuy giving you this message that's going to allow you to realize that not everything's linear. It's not all going to be fucking roses all the time. Sometimes life's going to come and bite you on the ass. But if you can keep plugging away, if you can keep being consistent, if you can keep getting the food in, then any shit days, bad days, rough days, lost night's sleep, whatever, won't be as massively impactful as they could be. And hopefully there's a lesson there for some people to take away and say, okay, listen, get through this stuff and be ready to grow, ready to cut, ready to do whatever the fuck it is that you go to the gym for, and get it done. Tell us a little bit more about your journey to wanting to lift, wanting to train, becoming a bodybuilder. Steve normally says, take it back to school. So when did you first, was you involved in sports at school?
Yeah.
Or
We've
was
had a
it
lot of
training more later
Aussies.
on? Yeah.
We have a lot of
Yeah.
Aussies that were basketball players. I didn't know basketball was so popular in Australia. Was that something you got into?
Nah, no basketball for me, brother. But pretty much what I was is I did a lot of martial arts when I was young. My dad was a in the army, and he was very big on discipline and self-defense and stuff like that. So I did a bit of martial arts when I was young. Unfortunately, in doing so, I end up having an accident falling, breaking my arm, and that kind of took me out of that. So a couple of years later, through school, I'm pretty, what do you call, what are they, ectomorph, or whatever, the ones that have a really high metabolism. I was always a
Yeah.
small, skinny kid in
Ectomorph,
school, you know what
the
I mean?
tall, skinny, bony. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That fucking, tall, skinny guy. And it wasn't particularly, popular in high school. Played a bunch of video games, and by the time I finished, I was like, you know what, fuck this, bro. It's time. Started the gym. We got started at the back of, like, my mate had a garage, barbell, that kind of stuff, and we just smashed it. I used to go there and train without him. You know what I mean? He was getting bored. He wasn't doing shit. I was at his house, unannounced, in his garage training. Eventually, well, it turned about, 19, 20, got my first gym membership, started pumping the gym. The problem was it was always a bit of a struggle to put on weight. Very lean, but putting on weight itself, no matter what I ate, was an issue. And as we're kind of going through, um, as you kind of evolve through the bodybuilding world, you got people, you see, this guy's on steroids, this guy's taking testosterone, blah, blah, blah. You're talking to different people. My current coach now, I met would have been maybe 10 years ago when I first started the gym. This guy was what, 18, 19. He was going for his pro card. He's doing all sorts of stuff. And I only circled back now recently to him, but that's another story anyway. But yeah, as you go kind of progress, I was pretty much a natural lifter. just wanted to be kind of, to gain a bit of muscle, a bit more confidence, look better, feel better about myself, that kind of stuff. And I was a natural body, like natural for what, 6 years, maybe 6.5, 7 years, something like that. And I was relentless, bro. I was at the fucking gym like every day. Um, you know, crazy, like pretty into it. I love going to the gym. I love training, love going hard. You know, you meet friends, you talk to people. Yeah, love the whole thing.
One of the things I think Steve and I said, I think we're both ecto-meso, which means we were kind of tall and skinny, but we added weight slowly over time. And actually, arguably, you kind of want that because it means you're not fat, that you stay relatively lean the time that you're gaining. You're listening to a cool guy again, listeners, and the idea of, he had what, 5 or 6 year foundation, which is really good actually. Too many people. We had one recently on the forum, Steve. He trained 4 months, 3 months. I think another one was 6 months. And assuming you're old enough, I want at least 2 years just to learn your trade, get your training right, get your consistency right, get your food right. So I like the fact that you took about 6 years to get into it. Even the little
Yeah,
comment you made about your buddy dropping out, but you sticking with it and getting through. He disappeared, but you were still hitting the weights in his little basement gym or whatever else was kind of cool.
yeah,
What about where you are now, from where you started? How far do you think you've come as a journey in terms of lifting weights and adding muscle and whatever else? Look back at yourself. Where was you pre-steroids and when you got started and where you are now? Give us an idea, just again for those listeners that haven't been on that journey
yeah,
yet.
absolutely. I was, ooh, I was talking to my friend actually today about a different friend. We used to train a lot at the gym. We were happy to kind of hit about 75 kilos. So that was, I don't know what it is in labs for you Americans, but 75 kilos. I'm now currently, I don't know if we mentioned the weight, but I'm now currently 96 kilos. And the body fat percentage is probably pretty similar. So that is a 21 kilo difference between, when I was natural, when I started, when I was 23, 22, 24 in that age to now. And now I'm what, 31.
Close to,
So
for the Americans, that'd be 42, 43 pounds, which is fantastic, let's be fair.
yeah, yeah, pretty good. So I'm
Something
pretty
you
happy with.
mentioned,
Mhm.
something you mentioned, and without going too far along too quickly, um, we've talked with the Australians. We've seen obviously the Australian section of the evolutionary forums, and I've kind of hinted at from time to time the way that the Australian PED availability, shall we call it, can be at times difficult. Just this weekend, one of the sources was fucking around so much they've had to be thrown off the forums. Talk a
Yeah,
little bit
yeah.
about how, yeah, so I'm not going to name them, but talk about I mean, we talked about this in the show notes, the difficulty sometimes with the Australian market, you getting products without being specific to companies, and also the information that's available and how that's worked with you on Evolutionary to learn more about what you're doing when it comes to PEDs as well.
100%. So one thing, to go to your later point there about the information, one thing that I took on hugely as I was coming in to look at PEDs and my stuff like that was research, side effects, benefit, how to do it, PCT, talk to people, man, I was doing it all. And even then, you don't figure out exactly, you can do all the research in the world, but you won't figure out what you need or how to do it until you actually do it. One thing that doesn't get spoken about enough is the fact that you can't just copy someone's cycle because every compound reacts differently for every person. And that's what you need to figure out. You just need to be prepared for everything. Um, and in terms of availability for PEDs, steroids and stuff in Australia, yeah, it can be a little bit hard. Obviously, we're an island in the middle of nowhere, and we have one of the toughest customs kind of in the world, from my knowledge anyway. And I have huge respect for the vendors who are taking a risk to get these products in, get the raws, brew it up. Um, Most of Australia is obviously UGL, which is underground labs for those who are unaware. And that means we as bodybuilders are trusting this person to to make this gear, to make it clean, to make it well, to make it dose correctly. And that's why the Evo community is such a huge benefit because you don't have to, as a consumer, take a risk on old mate at the gym like we used to. Now we have these people who are vetted. You can look up logs. You can check out the blood work. You can do
Yeah.
all sorts of things and just get the product that you need. Unfortunately, there's a bit of trouble with things like Masteron and Primobolan coming into Australia or in general, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so
Mass
there
has
is a bit
been a
of a
massive
with.
thing worldwide, fella, but even much harder than anywhere else in
Yeah,
Australia. Just as an indication for listeners, I believe we're possibly the only other place that compares in terms of customs would probably be the Middle East. I think UAE, Dubai, where you're probably going to go to fucking jail.
it wouldn't surprise me.
I've been red flagged twice. Well, should I say I've had warning letters twice. Australian customs has its own fucking TV series that you can watch over here, Steve, and they don't fuck about whether it's bringing in food you shouldn't bringing in stuff that's got fucking insects on it that's just going to ruin the Australian crops. But especially, obviously, when it comes to recreational narcotics and to a lesser degree steroids, but it's up there on the list. And they are probably number one or number two in the world for catching people. So it can be very, very difficult coming in.
Yeah.
I also describe the Australian market as a little bit like the Mexican American stuff that we used to get 15 or 20 years ago. So it's still UGL. Even what we would call UGL can still be a proper lab in the case of some approved sources outside of Australia, proper building, proper lab, proper equipment. Australia's not always like that, and yet the product can still be good if you find the
Correct.
right place. And that's another
Correct.
reason why people come on Evolutionary.
So
You've also mentioned, yeah, talk about learning your trade because you said, and I've actually said this on shows, we try to give generalized information when we do shows about steroids. What have you learned for yourself, specifically for yourself, about your own steroid use and your own steroid experience before we talk about your cycle?
Absolutely, Steve. Absolutely, Mobster. So I've learned a couple of things, right? So obviously, I've kind of learned which compounds work well for me, what compounds I like, what compounds react well with my body. So, for example, one thing that surprised me a lot, which makes it kind of weird, is Deca as a slow-acting ester. So, Deca itself, not very good for me. I don't like it. It makes me feel pretty shit, that kind of stuff. But NPP, which is obviously the fast-acting ester of the same compound, pretty much is amazing. I love it. It works really well. I've taken it in a fairly large dose, and had zero issues, zero side effects, all sorts of stuff. But give me 200 milligrams of Deca a week and a mess. You know, it's insane. So things like that, you kind of learn by trial and error. I've learned a couple of pretty interesting things. I've learned a lot about insulin use, which I learned from a couple of the boys here on Evo. Pigsy, for example, he gave me a bit of help. I've learned, from a coach, that kind of stuff. Growth hormone, amounts you take, benefits, stuff like that. PCT in general, when you should PCT, when you shouldn't PCT, huge amount of stuff. Like this is all stuff that you can, you know, find on the internet. But like I said, without having done it yourself, it doesn't mean
Yeah.
shit. Like it's gobbledygook. You know what I
tell
mean?
me tell me about Sustanon because in your log you mentioned you like Sustanon. Is it
Yeah.
same reasoning with Sustanon? You like the different blend of testosterone?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm a daily pinner because, I'm a freak like that. Um, and Sustanon is one of those things which I just started to use and never looked back. Testy is great. Um, I had a test probe at one point, and I kind of really liked the fact that I could feel it kind of come on pretty quick. Um, and then basically when I kind of moved to Sustanon, it was very similar. If you take it in high enough dose, you kind of get the same feeling, but I just found that I liked the product, so I stuck with it.
And what are some other steroids that you really liked besides the MPP and Sustanon and the Masteron? What are some others that you've used that you've been like, you know what, I like these a lot?
Mm.
Yeah. So I've used a few. couple of the orals, Anavar, Anadrol,
Yeah.
stuff like that. Anadrol, I really like. I found that I didn't have too many issues with liver toxicity, but then again, I wouldn't run it as a cycle per se. I would
Yeah.
generally run it 1 or 2 weeks or use it pretty sparingly as like, man, I'm got to get to the gym, do a pump, bang, bang that Anadrol in. Um, Something like, you know, Primobolan, really like Primobolan. It's, gone in Australia for the time being, but we replaced it with Mastron, which is I've found pretty good as well. It really is good for giving you that kind of dry, grainy look, which I'm really
Yeah.
starting to notice in my own physique, which is amazing. It's something that I didn't think I would see. Um, that mixed with MPP, obviously, as well. I haven't tried with too many of the exotics. But something like Tren. Tren I found I didn't like. Tren Ace is great. I ran it for probably 3 weeks, coming into week 4 for the compound at what was probably, I think, 70 milligrams a week or 100 milligrams a week. Can't remember now. I just like I was starting to wake up in puddles of sweat. I was, anxious, started to get,
Yeah.
it's just a nightmare, bro. And I pretty much vowed to never touch it again.
I've
Like I don't
described the
need it,
sensation.
don't want it,
I don't.
nothing.
Yeah, so I don't really get that I'm on testosterone kind of feeling, but I definitely knew when I was using Tren, and I described the sensation for me as feeling ever so slightly toxic in terms of my overall perception of how I felt. On the whole way that we respond to certain steroids, and I mean, I mentioned it earlier that we kind of generic or generalized when we give advice for testosterone or sustanon or whatever else. It sounds to me, and this might even be part of your ectomorphic background, that you're relatively lean all the time. So your response to steroids, being an ectomorph when you started, being relatively lean all the time, might differ for someone with higher body fats, or might differ from first cycle, second cycle, third cycle experience, or even just age. I don't respond the same way to products that I used to respond 5, 10, or even 15 years ago. So yeah, it's definitely a learning process the whole time, and we do need to be specific in our own particular requirements. So before we talk about your current cycle, talk a little bit about your current diet and training. You mentioned getting in the meals. So tell again the listeners what you're doing right now as an overview for training and diet.
Yep, absolutely. So I'm on what is currently a bit of a growth phase. I'm coming into the top end of my growth phase. So hopefully check in on Thursday. We put the slim back in, we up the calories, that kind of stuff. But currently I'm sitting at around 5,000 calories, just under 5,000 calories. So this is broken up into 5 different meals. Meal one is a bit hard for me, generally in the morning. So I've worked with my coach. We've got a meal that's nice and quick, high protein, high carbs. It's a bit of a rough meal. It is a protein shake. This thing, Monster, is about 930 calories with 50 grams of protein. It's got protein powder, bananas, oats. It's got cocoa pops. It's got, um, you know, honey in it. It's got almond butter, and then there's dates on the side. So the idea is blend it up, smash it down, takes about a minute to drink,
Mm.
and then I'm out the door. So meal one, pretty good. Meal two and three, they're the same meal. They are chicken and rice and veggies, a typical bro bodybuilder meal.
Yeah,
And there's a reason for it. Rice, fast digesting carbs, really low in GI. Chicken, one of your better protein sources. The
yeah,
meal's really low in fats because I'm not running any sauce, no oil, nothing like that. Just protein. It's also got a little bit of sultanas mixed in it for a bit of extra carbs, that kind of stuff. But yeah. Then we've got my meal four is my pre-workout meal. This is my favorite meal. So this is the cream of rice, which is functionally like rice flour, protein powder, berries, dark chocolate, all mixed together. This thing is like a dream. There's a bit of a technique. I know a couple of the Evo boys are struggling with it. But there is a technique for it and it comes out really good. It's like a dessert. So you have this meal. This is where you're going to get all your fast acting carbs, especially if you're running something like insulin, like Norvo Rapid
yes,
or something like that.
yes.
This is where you get your carbs. This is fast acting carbs. You take it now, you take your pre-workout insulin with this meal, off to the gym, 45 minutes, half an hour later. You
Yeah,
have
so
your,
just to
yeah,
interrupt for
yep,
a second, and this is something where I know the uninformed and the people that haven't done the research have struggled. They've got this idea that all top professional bodybuilders are using insulin, which may not be true. But the trick, and there's two thoughts. One is you need to do it correctly in terms of the food and the insulin together. People sometimes do the insulin without the food properly, or vice versa. And the other one that I've noticed, and it depends on the food again. Some people just got fucking fat, or they blew up, but it seemed to be water and fat. And when you went back and looked at their diets were shit. So they go, oh, my insulin experience was rubbish. I didn't get nothing out of it, or I got fat. And again, you go back and look at the protocols, the proper protocols. You said being on Evolutionary, Pixie giving you proper information. By the sounds of it, this pre-workout meal of yours is absolutely doing the trick. If it's done properly, it does the trick, as opposed to you having a bad experience or getting fat or not getting anything from
H
insulin. So, yeah,
HGH though, talk about HGH, how important it is with insulin as well.
yes, yeah,
right,
go on.
yeah, absolutely, 100%. So HGH is basically hand in hand. Pro, like the pro bodybuilder level, you've got your two most important compounds are probably your growth hormone and your insulin, at least now for modern bodybuilding, followed by your steroids, right? These two things go hand in hand. They they work so well together. Growth hormone is a fucking miracle drug. You know what I mean? It does everything. And insulin basically really gets all those carbs to do what they need to do. Um, Plus an insane pump at the gym if you want to make it look kind of freaky. But yeah, they work hand in hand. If you are taking insulin, you should be taking growth hormone, right? You should be taking growth hormone. That in my opinion, anyway. You know what I mean? But it's to their own, I guess.
I'm going to ask you because I've made three notes here. One is meal five. So give us meal five, then I'll tell the listeners what your log says in terms of your cycle, and then we'll talk briefly about training. So meal five is what after the gym.
Yeah,
What you
I do
eating?
have an intra. There is an intra workout
Oh,
drink,
okay, go on, go on, go
which
on.
is your dextrose carbs and your ECAs and all that kind of shit, which is pretty simple. And then we got meal five. Meal five is my top end meal. It's 1,000 calories just over. And this is what you call your traditional dinner. In fact, I'm halfway through eating it now. This meal is, we've got fat-free chips, we've got extra lean beef, we've got salad, we've got a little bit of fruit juice. I've got cheeky LCM bar in there as well. And just kind of round everything off. So these 5 meals, I normally have this one post-workout just to kind of fuel everything.
Yeah. What about? Let me read. This is from your October 25 list, and you can
Yeah.
let us know if this has changed. You wrote down, and I just copied and pasted this: testosterone as sustanon at 350 milligrams a week, which of course you're pinning daily, as you said. Masteron propionate, 450 milligrams a week, again daily, and this will be the daily, not weekly. 5 IUs of GH in the afternoon, or PM as it puts here, so around the time of the workout on it or after, and metformin as the insulin, of course, for the 500 milligrams. And again, that would be daily. The others are weekly, those last two are daily. Has that changed, or is that still what you're doing right now?
Yeah, the only thing we've changed so far is adding in 10 milligrams of NPP a day, which would be
Yep.
about 70 milligrams a week. It's the only thing that's changed in that current thing. I also, for what it's worth, not that it's necessarily a like a steroid, but we also take telmisartan at 40 milligrams a day.
Yes. Yeah.
And that is very important in order to keep your blood pressure. Blood pressure is something that I monitor pretty regularly. It's one of the silent killers. So
Yes.
it's something you've got to
Yes.
keep on top of for sure.
One of our other podcasts we did recently, the member was, and again, it's for the benefit of listeners, he was doing his glucose levels every day, and he was doing his blood pressure levels every day. I made a note here.
Yeah.
Are you using a GLP? I think you are.
No, so I'm not using any GLP-1 antagonist or anything like that. I'm just using metformin. So no retatrutide for me, nothing like
right.
that.
Yeah.
Are you going to use
I
them in the
think it must
future
have just
or
come out
no?
as a comment. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. That was what I was
So
thinking.
no, you're right. So they potentially, basically, I work pretty close with my coach. Currently, we're worried about things like I sometimes already struggle to kind of keep my food in because I'm pretty lean, and I am worried a little bit about something like hunger suppression or anything like that.
Yeah.
Obviously, retatrutide does seem to be the future going forward, but while I have the supply of metformin, which I picked up a while back, I might as well run it. Metformin is tried and tested. It works. There's no need to kind of reinvent the wheel from our point of view.
No, I mean, obviously, if this, I say this all the time, and again, this is for listeners. I said I can argue the toss about diet, I can argue the toss about steroids or training, but the key phrase should always be: if what you're doing is working, if the results are good, if your numbers come back on your blood test are good, fuck what Mobster says or thinks. If on the other hand there is something to be changed or is something to be tweaked, again, this is what CoolGuy should be doing when he's talking to his coach. He should be having these conversations. And you should always be able to say, there's a reason for why I do, and I'm getting great results. If the reason is great, but the results are shit, it needs to be changed. It's not complicated. It's not rocket science, as we say. Talk a bit about your training. My note, and I'm only going to say this as a weightlifter, if what you're doing is working, it doesn't matter. But I made in my show notes, lifts kind of light and reps in reserve. And that's something I've seen come up in terms of the quote unquote science-based training, essentially meaning people stop 1 or 2 reps short of failure or whatever. So talk a little bit about your training and what you do
Yeah.
and whether or not, of course, obviously for you it's working, so I can talk about my ass as far as my opinion for whether it's light or not. But tell us a little bit about your training.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm not a very word. I don't do a lot of actual compound lifts, even when I was young, before I had a coach. My bench was okay, my deadlift was shit, my squat was kind of shit. So when I was kind of figuring out which way to go, I really wanted to look good. So I went more for bodybuilding. And you know, when you're a young gym bro, you hear 12 reps of this, blah, blah, blah. What I'm at now, where we are with the coach, is we do a lot of exercises. So if you look in my log and you see any of my workouts, instead of doing 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 exercises, I have a bunch. All these exercises are generally also split up to a few sets of each, maybe 2 sets of this one, 3 sets of that one. And we have a couple of different basically styles. So we would do a certain amount of reps in reserve, and this is depending on what type of training we are doing. So without getting too technical, you've got like your top set, back off set, you got your fatigue building training, you've got what is functionally your your supersets, all that kind of stuff. There's all these different types of sets. We also have to pay attention to tempo. Tempo is something I haven't put in my log because it's getting kind of pretty nitty gritty. In the pictures I put in, it does show, but tempo is also plays a big thing because it shows, time under tension, how long you should be doing the exercises for, all this kind of stuff. But rep in reserve, I found I never used to do it. I used to do everything to failure, everything. But now reps in reserve allows me to kind of figure out, get a little bit more of my workout instead of pushing to failure on step 1 and then resting for, 3 minutes and then pushing to failure on step 2, resting for 3 minutes. I can kind of shorten my rest period and still kind of get the majority of the workout done. So there's still a couple of times that I'm like, fuck it, I'm going to just push this one to failure, and I do. But it is functional failure, not full failure. So when I feel that the exercise is starting to, my form is failing,
Yes,
that's where I
starting to
count it
break
as
down.
a stop.
Yeah. I mean,
Also about
again,
yeah, I
yeah,
was
go
gonna
on.
ask
It's working for him, so yeah, absolutely. Why not? It's got a great side chest,
yeah.
by the way,
I
listeners. That
think
was one of my other
also
notes. Go on, Steve.
talk about your health through your training because one of the things too a lot of guys do that train and they kind of there's no method to the training. They just go in there and they just throw heavy
Yes,
weights
yes,
around. They go to failure every set. They do 1 rep maxes every workout. And then they tell me they're like, "Oh, Steve, I have to take an aspirin. I have to take 3 aspirin just to
yeah.
get to sleep because I'm in pain." I'm like, "Dude, you come in here. All I see you do, you come in here and you wrap your fucking knees up and you go on the fucking Smith machine and you do like 1 rep maxes on squats. And then you wrap your elbows and your shoulders and your chest and you go on the bench press and you do 1 rep maxes.
Steve, I'm feeling triggered. What's going on?
I know.
Yeah, we don't have to attack Mobster like that. What are you talking about?
I don't know like how Mobster you're still going, but obviously
I
Mobster
don't have
you
that.
don't
I
train
don't
like
have
that.
that problem. Funny enough,
Yeah.
I'm very lucky in that regards. Look, I mean, the obvious thing here, guys, just to take the piss a little bit, but the obvious thing here is, yeah. Sometimes we can see people in the gym, and what the fuck are you doing? And you've not grown for 10 years. You haven't changed shape. Blah, 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 blah. But again, we're all on different journeys, different pathways, whatever else, right? So the key thing here, and I'll emphasize this point again, the key thing here is progress. I made a note that Cool Guy's got an absolutely great side chest. Okay. So if he goes to the gym, if he's got time under tension, is a great way to work out. And when I do forearms, it's time under fucking tension. There's no sort of break for the thing. For 75 seconds, the muscles working the whole fucking time, even when it's at the bottom or the top of the movement. And my forearms are 16 and a half, 17 fucking inches. So obviously I'm doing something right. Cool Guy is doing something right. We look, what we do on the forum is we look at what you're doing, if you're making progress. So you're getting injured? Is he sore all the fucking time? Has he had no growth in his chest for fucking years? Let's see what the fuck he's doing. So we'll talk about these things on these shows just to give people an idea that he's working with his coach, his training's progressing, he's changing his shape, things are fucking working. That's what matters. But we do like to analyze, we do like to look at it. I mean, it's like a second or third set of eyes, and not in a critical way. We want the listener, we want people like Cool Guy to progress. We want them to do well in the gym. So we look at these things and we say, okay, let's see what you're doing. Is the rep range good? Is the time under tension good? And so on and so forth. So yeah, these are all sort of important things. You get go on to the next part, Steve.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you your future. Are you planning on competing? Are you planning on just being, in the gym, especially with the baby? Are you planning on, doing something else when it comes to fitness? What is your kind of motivation and plans over the next maybe 2, 3 years?
That is a very good question. So I've thought about it myself. Prior to having a child, I did in some way eventually want to get to a point where I could potentially do a show or do competing. However, having friends who have competed, and even my coach as well, who recently won a pretty uh, high-end show for his division. Is a lot of work, man. Like currently, if I was trying to go do competing at a serious level, I don't have the funding, don't have the time, that kind of stuff. So my goal at the moment is to basically I do small goals. So I want to hit 100 kilos, I want to do I want to be, the best of myself, all that kind of stuff. Ultimately, I originally, when I first started to actually take steroids, I was hugely low on testosterone, like naturally low. And that's what originally kind of pushed me in. So my journey in bodybuilding is just to pretty much be the best me I can be. And I think that is what everyone should do, right? If you get to the point where you're looking to compete, perfect. But not all of us have the resources to be able to do such a thing. And I don't think that I have the resources to do it.
I
So
think it's
currently, yeah.
I think multitasking is a lot harder for men in general. I think women do it a lot better. It has a lot to do with childbearing and the way we evolved and stuff. But Arnold talked about, um, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys. He said that he was doing a competition and he got a call from Austria saying, "Oh, your father passed away. You need to come here for the funeral." And he told him,
Yeah,
he's like,
that was slightly made up, a bumping
"Oh, okay,
iron,
it
but
was okay."
there was a semblance of truth to it because he
Yeah.
wanted to give the idea. He wanted to describe to the reporter
How
this.
serious you have to be and all in
Yes,
you have to
yes,
be
yes,
if you
yes.
want to succeed at
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
you have you're when you're focusing on one thing, especially as a man, if you want that to be 100%, that's what you got to do. That's why it's kind of hard in the gig economy. We have a gig economy now in the United States. I'm sure it's
yeah,
it's it's trending that way
yeah.
in Australia and England, where you
And
guys
yep,
are,
Yeah.
yep, yep, yep,
where
yep.
people are doing 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different things, And men have a really hard time with that, where they're basically they're not able to succeed doing that. But women are able to succeed doing gig jobs. Like a woman could be a hooker on the side or a stripper at night, be a mother during the day, work
Yeah.
a full-time job, do all this shit. But men, they try to, balance things, that way. It's really, really hard. So yeah, touch
I
on that.
joked
Yeah.
with I joked at Mel at the gym saying about James helping, and she said, "Oh, he could always do more." And I said that we're busy out catching the bears, Mel, joking around with her. Look, the reality is, and I'm sure I was actually going to ask you one. What do you think your reasons were, arguably, for possibly the low testosterone that you mentioned earlier on? But also, again, this is what, like Steve said, it's very common now for myself included to have a side gig. This is a side gig that we're doing right now. So me doing this, putting the time out for this shows, you guys coming on to help us for these shows, it's something else. You've done shows like this yourself already, cool guy. You know how it works. So yeah, it can be very, very busy and structured. I think the thing that helps, and we've talked about this on the addiction shows, and you said it earlier on about being consistent, and that is this structure. Even if it's so many hours a day being a dad, so many hours a day doing the work, so many hours a day doing the other things. So talk a little bit about that, your experience perhaps and your insight. Again, this might be something that helps other people, how you manage to get these things done, as we were touching upon a little bit earlier on as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you're right. I also have a side gig. The funny thing is, my side gig is actually an extension of my main job. So, to me, it feels like I'm just working 6 or 7 days a week sometimes. But
Yeah, yeah.
beside the point. Um, yep. So you asked me about low testosterone before
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
I just had it, bro. Like, fuck, I
It
came
might be
out.
from working. It might be from working too fucking hard.
I
Yeah.
I had it when I was like, I had it when I was like 18. So full disclosure, I was a like fucking loser when I was young. So I spent the early part of my 20s doing nothing that you would be doing in the early part of your 20s. I was going to the gym, um, struggling to gain any weight, playing games, and that was it, bro. Like I wasn't going clubbing, wasn't interacting with girls, mate. I had no
Just
idea.
naturally
I
low
had friends,
testosterone. Not
bro, no,
everybody's going to
nothing.
be high. Yeah, yeah.
And by the time I hit 24 or 23, 24, and my friend's like, bro, you got to go get it, bro. Go get a blood test, we'll suss it out. People thought I was either gay or asexual because I just had no interest.
Mm, mm.
It was low. Now, I don't know how what the hormones and stuff are like hormone clinics are like in the States and the UK, but they're shit here. You got zero
Yes,
help. They won't
I have
even
heard
look
that you
at you
can
until you're about
struggle to
30
get.
years old.
Yeah, it's very rare to get a prescription via the local health services for Australia, and it's quite hard here in the UK. There's a lot more clinics now than there was in the UK and private stuff, and there's a lot more clinics, especially the private clinics in America. But the general perception for the NHS, and I think the Australian medical community, the government, whatever you want to call it, medical stuff in Australia is almost just fucking deal with it. It's much harder to have them
Yeah.
take you seriously and treat it and give you a quality of life. I mean, talk about that. Talk about the difference between how you felt then and how you feel now in terms of being on
Yeah.
testosterone and the difference it's made.
Yeah. So, real briefly as well, before I was actually on testosterone before I was part of EVO community.
Yeah,
But there was a point in that time where my friend who I was getting the stories off, his dealer got picked up and we were cooked. Right. There was no other one that I couldn't find anyone else to get it. And this is when I had just met my wife. And she actually got to witness me normal. I was running, 200 mils of testosterone a week, so a
yeah,
normal. And that was about a year. And about a year into the relationship, COVID hit. Um, Basically, that was 2019, 2020, whatever the fuck it was now.
yeah.
And I was off, like no PCT, no nothing, dropped off, and I went back exactly how I used to be. I
Mm.
basically just shriveled up, not in terms of my size, but in
No, no,
terms of
no, no.
my mental, you know what I mean? Like my
Yes,
drive went, I
yes.
was tired, lethargic, exactly what I used to be prior to it. And so she supports me in the journey, obviously, because then when I found Evo and I started back up and I was started running what was like, 200 milligrams a week, and she could see it. I'm back to being energetic. I'm back to just being normal, you know what I mean? And that's something that is very important. And the best thing I ever did is, well, if you ask my wife, second best thing, but best thing I ever did was actually jump on testosterone. Um, and I think it's a hugely beneficial drug. And if it's done correctly, even for people that aren't doing for bodybuilding, but
Yeah,
people like
yeah, yeah,
myself who are
yeah,
naturally low
yeah.
in testosterone, have done the blood
Yes.
work, aren't getting any help, like 100 milligrams a week, 125, true TRT will change people's lives.
I'm going to ask you a question here. I mean, this is actually something that we've done a whole show on where we talked about communicating with your other half, whether that's a fella or a woman or whatever, whichever way you swing. And
Yep.
there's sometimes a perception of, oh, steroids are bad. Okay, all this kind of bullshit. I've had conversations with the girlfriend. I'm in my fucking 60s, 61. She's 62. And we're still getting it on, obviously. And I will say, look, at some point, 60, 75, 80, who the fuck knows, this won't be happening or it will happen a lot
Yeah.
less. So having adult conversations and your wife seeing the fucking difference is super, super important. It helps them support you. And it's always this misconception of HRT is okay for women, but TRT for men, why? Blah, blah, blah. So we're a lot more comfortable, arguably getting more comfortable, having adult conversations, talking to her wife, and she got the experience of seeing what you was like when this didn't fucking happen and knowing what that's like as a
Correct.
man, as a lover, as a whatever. So yeah,
That's
you know what I
correct.
mean? Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. So
what's really fucked,
yeah.
Mobster? That you can go as a woman, go and get
Oh
like
yeah,
you can
easily,
take the pill. You
easily.
can go get the pill, which is functionally like a
Yes,
steroid in itself.
yes.
Um, and it's toxic and it's shit for you. But I can't walk into a chemist and grab a vial of testosterone. You know what I
No.
mean? Like, what the fuck? What are we talking about? It's mental.
And I mean, it's like I said, it's the idea. It's the idea. Women can literally peel, which is a steroid of it's deliberately HRT for perimenopausal, postmenopausal women.
Yep.
Absolutely understood, no problem. Fucking cold sweats, getting hairy, feeling like fucking shit. Let's put you on HRT. Man, low testosterone. No, he can fucking go. But he's only at the bottom end of the spectrum. Fuck it. The idea that you have to wait until perhaps you're fucking 50 or 60 years of age and then pay for it rather than
Yep.
have it prescribed for you just for a quality of life, which you described perfectly, is insightful. Talk a little
Fucking
bit
joke.
about as we
Yeah.
get towards the end of the show here.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you mentioned a little bit earlier on, but coming on to evolutionary, how fucking helpful, not just with PEDs, but how helpful as a whole, and also some of your experience. You
Yeah.
mentioned Evo friends on
Yeah. Talk about
in
some of your
your
favorite logs as well on
yeah,
Evo that
yeah,
you really enjoy looking at every day.
Yeah, 100%. So I've got a good little group of friends, right? Most of them are Aussie boys. Obviously because we're all up at the same time and around. Some of the vendors, for example, I've spoken to many of the vendors, and even if I'm not particularly purchasing a product, I chat to them. Obviously, my own um supported vendor, I guess the word would be. Speak to them all the time. A couple of the vendors, love those guys. I don't know who they are, never met them, that kind of stuff, but I would still treat them as friends. In terms of other people, Pigsy, of course, love Pigsy. Everyone in the Aussie community loves that guy. He's the best. Bit more recently, we have people like Dreamer, who I believe you guys had on the podcast. He is
yes,
part
yeah,
of
later on this
Team
week.
Team Gold alongside myself. So we obviously have our own chat. I love his log. I love his mindset. Everything about that guy. There's also a
Yes,
couple more of the Aussie boys. Big Cheese, love that guy. He's a bit younger than myself, but we get on really well. Everyone, and pretty much everyone in the Aussie community, there is that all the loggers get on really well. So
mm.
I always check out their logs, see what they've been up to. A couple of them I have had chats with personally, even outside of Evolutionary. Just to give you an idea, I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but we had one of our Aussie members have a basically he was in hospital for a period of time.
Right.
And pretty much the Aussie community actually band together. One of the boys found his GoFundMe, and what we
Nice.
did as a community is we had a bunch of us jump on and we donated $50 here, $50 there,
Nice.
$100 here, and actually
Yeah.
as a community completely outside of Evo, off Evo, but obviously formed from Evo is we were sending him money and we were helping him and he ended up making a recovery. He's back in the community, he's back in action, and you know, it's something that I find to be super important, like this camaraderie between
Yeah.
Yeah.
loggers on Evo and stuff like
The
that.
the the blue zones across the world, and we've talked about blue zones on this podcast, before Mobster 9. One of the
Mm.
common denominators that they have is that family, that community. When a neighbor down the
Yeah.
street has an
Yes.
issue paying their rent or paying their bill or something, the
Yeah.
whole street chips into a hat and takes it to them. They here because they know that one day they may have an issue, and then so the community all bands together, and that's what
Yeah.
Evo is all about. You don't see that on other forums. Other forums, they step on you when you're down. They bully you. It's really disgraceful the way it is. If someone goes on their,
Someone commented the other day, Steve, that they'd had a shit day or something, and they got 10 DMs from within an hour asking them if they was okay. It was that sort of vibe. I'm reminded of my days with Mick Hart back in the day. Mick literally gave me $1,000 to go and do my first American competition. We put together stuff exactly like
you
Cool
won't see
Guys just
that on
mentioned.
social media. You won't see that
Yeah,
on other
yeah.
bodybuilding forums at
I do
all.
small stuff off
No,
the site, but listen, I
absolutely
mean, this
not.
is the thing that's important, right? When I was younger, and I was actually going to say this as a little bit of a jib for our younger listeners, we can be a little bit self-occupied because we're trying to find our way in the world or whatever else. Cool Guy is a dad. And once you start to become a dad, once you start to, for want of a better phrase, grow the fuck up, you realize if you've had a shit day and someone DMs and say, "You're right there, fella. Someone's in hospital. Hope you get well soon, buddy," and so on and so forth. And then you think, hang on, I've had the same fucking experience. I can do this. And it takes me fucking 5 minutes, 30, 40, $50, $100. Well, there's been times when I couldn't have afforded that. Now I fucking can. And that buddy needs help. I'm in a position where I can help. Send $100 or $50 Australian to a GoFundMe because I want to see that fella back on his feet out of hospital. And if the shit happens to me, I love the idea that people may be able to help me and support me. So this is where the community aspect comes in. And I'll say this again, as I did at the beginning when we were talking about the thank you portion of the show. The sense of community that we've had for the last, I'm going to say 12 months, fuck 6 months, because it's every time I say it's 6 months, it must be getting more than that now, has grown and grown and grown. And I don't just mean in terms of people coming on and getting advice about steroids or training or whatever, but literally making sure people are okay mentally. If they're having a struggling day because they used to struggle with alcohol, it's another day forward, seller. Don't fucking let
Yeah,
yourself
yeah,
down in this kind of vibe. Those things are
yeah.
huge.
So let
Cool
Cool
Guy's a
Guy
great
comment on
example.
that. Yeah, go ahead, Cool Guy.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that is is important is actually the mental aspect of stories. So obviously people talk a lot about like roid rage and stuff like that,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah,
there's also a lot of other feelings that you can get. So I found personally, I don't have what people would call roid rage.
no, me
I
neither.
found that steroids are very good at amplifying feelings that you already have. If you're already depressed and you're already doing this and you take these compounds, there's a good chance you might just feel more depressed. You know what I mean? Like it will amplify whatever you are feeling. And sometimes that can be you can be depressed, you can be sad. And I found out obviously when I got a bit older than what I used to be is I chat to my friends all the time and like man on man, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
There's always something going on and you should always check in with your friends, right? You never know. It doesn't take much to be like, yo, you're like, how you doing? How you feeling? Because they could be having the shittest day. And the
yeah,
fact that you've just reached out and be like, how are you feeling? You know what I mean? It could completely change it. For example, we were out shopping the other day, and there's a kid, I must have been 15 or 16, and he was trying to buy some groceries, and he got one of those gift cards. It didn't fucking work, and he's sitting there and he's looking all upset. And I was like, you know what, fuck it, I've got the money to
yeah,
pay this. I fucking pay for
yeah,
this kid's groceries, and
yeah.
he thanked me, and he looked happy, and he ran off. And it's things like that, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't take much just
Mate,
to make
honestly,
someone's day.
Yeah,
we had floods down here earlier this year, and one of my neighbours across the road says that the only two houses that were affected by the local flooding, the electrics have been knocked off. And he said they're literally waiting for something to be sorted out. I says, when? Well, they've got no fridge, no fridge. No, all that shit's off. I says, what's the situation? He says, they're on benefits. I said, I gave him 20 quid, so 30 Australian, 40 Australian. Go and get a few bits and pieces for the day and take it down to them. You sure? I said, yeah, fuck that shit. I've been on the other end of that stuff and it helps. Look, right? We're all on a journey when it comes to PEDs. We're all on a journey when it comes to training. And one of the things that's great is when we have a positive experience in the gym, looking in the mirror, seeing the muscles coming through it, feeling that amazing pump, we stop being fucking selfish cunts and we start saying, hey, this is so fucking great. I want other people to feel like this. I want other people to feel good. I want other people, maybe if they need to be on TRT. So the idea that we can help people in that obvious way with Evolutionary and these kind of forums is one. But when we get to the point of buddies in hospital and we want them to come out, that's when the forum has grown up, if you like. That's when the forum's finally got hair on its balls and is able to help us beyond and above and beyond the obvious things that you'd normally expect us to deal with on the forums. Any more final thoughts before we come to the end of the show, guys?
Yeah, cool guy. Did you mention a couple of your favorite logs?
Yeah, so I actually really like a couple of the Aussie logs. They're normally the logs that I kind of see. I love the female logs. So female logs are my favorite because it gives me a different insight onto how steroids in bodybuilding like affect different people, and they're running different compounds. And it's something that's really interesting that something like Jigglypuff, for example, who is I think you guys had on the podcast. She is a fucking legend. Love that woman. And her
fantastic physique with a fraction of the steroids that we would use. A fraction.
It's mental. She's insane. She's dialed in and she's on it. But on the other end of the spectrum as well, there's a log called She Shreds. Her log is very good too. She is going through. She's got her retatrutide, her growth hormone, that kind of stuff, and they're killing it, bro. Like there's thousands of the logs with guys, and everyone's kind of got different things. But these female logs actually give you an insight into PED usage and stuff like that, which not a lot of people think about.
Tay.
Yeah, Mrs. Roid Rage. Mrs. Roid Rage this weekend.
OG, for sure.
She was so fucking close to doing what would have been a world fucking record in the gym, and she's on a fraction. I mean, she's probably like, all of these ladies are injecting weekly what CoolGuy is probably injecting daily, and one's nearly breaking a world record. Another one's got a world-class pro card physique. Others have got a fucking one. I think we nearly had on the other day. Epic fucking quads. And they're having to deal with the whole women with muscle, women with fucking veins on their arms bullshit that some of the women will have to deal with. And yet, us guys can go and learn from them how a Jigglypuff is a great example again. Fucking having a head on. I'm talking about genetics and genetic response to steroids and all this kind of stuff, not just for her, but for other women. The retatrutide, the GLPs in terms of fat loss, and having to deal with, the usual things that women deal with on behalf of men in relationships is, again, as you said, it's an insight, it's an inspiration, and proof positive that you can still make great gains on fractional amount of steroids as a woman.
Absolutely.
Without having to be too much masculinization or virilization or some of the bullshit, because we're not really seeing that with any of the ladies that we got, the main logs on the forum that we talked about. Yep. Any more final thoughts, guys, as we finish this show?
Yeah, cool guy. Give your final thoughts before we let you go. Overall, on final tips and advice for others out there listening to this.
Yep. One piece of advice I'd like to give is if you are thinking about jumping on steroids or starting your first steroid cycle, please get your blood work done. Something that isn't spoken about enough is blood work. It's something that I did right at the start. Obviously, I was looking only for testosterone, but blood work is huge. Blood work, blood pressure, all these other things. Man, you could be blasting thousands of milligrams of testosterone and feel great, and your testosterone level is really high, and your lipid profile looks great. But you got to check all these other things as well. Like, hopefully, most of us are in here for the long term. We're not looking to to taper out and die at 50 or something like that. But I know a lot of people are trying to stick around for a long period of time, and blood work and blood pressure and all these kinds of things, are hugely important. Um, More so potentially than the actual compounds you're weighing themselves. So I think that's probably my final thought. Get your blood work done, please, and go from there.
When you're younger, you don't give a fuck. But when you get older, and again, you're a dad, so it's become way more important than it ever was before. It becomes something that we do think about. Guys, if you're listening to this show, Steve's done a great article on the forums and many threads on the forums relating to blood tests. They're well worth checking out. It's great advice from CoolGuy. It doesn't seem important when you're younger, but it becomes very important as you get older. And if there's an argument to be made for that phrase, looking good is the best revenge, then looking good and stay looking good for as long as you fucking can, and there's even better revenge. So there you go on that particular one. Listen, come on the forums, check out CoolGuy's log, get into this community that we just discussed with everybody, because we think it's worthwhile, honestly, and the benefits, as CoolGuy has proved, are epic, and they're out there. That's not just a promotion for Evolutionary per se, but the whole training and sharing the good news and sharing the vibe that we have. And the fact that we love training, we want to train forever, as long as we possibly can. And that's what's come across today. Thank you so much again for coming on, CoolGuy. Without you, these podcasts can't take place. Listeners, let us know what you want. Did we ask enough questions? Could we have done more on the PDs? You know the usual. Let us know in the comments below. Come onto the forum and let us know again. Please note, as always, we are not doctors and the opinions are ours. It is our view based on our experience and views on the topic. A podcast of informational purposes and entertainment only. The freedom of speech and the First Amendment applies.